Hey all, Game Master Matt here, and welcome back to the channel. So, today's video is something that's going to be a little bit off the cuff. Usually I've got not a script, but at least, bullet points that I double check and cross reference. This is going to be a little bit more coming from in here. And the reason why is because of a recent, once again, debate, the TTRPG Twitter space, which can be a mixed blessing at times. What I'm going to talk about today is player agency and character death. Very important to not get those two mixed up. And how they are intrinsically linked and incredibly vital to I would say, fulfilling TTRPG experience for a number of games, but especially Dungeons and Dragons, but it's really for most TTRPGs. So I need to clarify exactly why I'm making this video, because obviously character death, player agency, these are topics that have been covered quite often, especially over decades of this hobby existing. But I haven't been doing YouTube for decades, so I figured I stuck my nose in it on Twitter the other day, and why not now do that on YouTube as well? So, what do I mean by player agency and character death? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. A character death is when a player character dies. Okay? Very easy definition. Player agency is when players have true agency to make decisions that have an impact on the world and their characters. Now, I believe these two are intrinsically linked. The discussion that once again popped up on Twitter was, is it failure? Is it when a character dies? Is that failure of the DM? And some people believe it is. I believe it is not. Now, I will have to quantify that a little bit, in the sense of if a DM or GM is purely out to get the players and wants to beat the players and win the game over the players, which winning and losing in DnD or TTRP is a weird concept in general, then that's a bad DM. So let's get that right out of the way. We're going to exclude bad DMs and pricks, and we're going to focus on people that are DMing or GMing, whatever you want to call it, because they love the hobby, they love doing it, they're creating stories, and they're not out to get you as a player. Okay. I saw people say, old school D&D and OSR is about meat grinders and they revel in character death. Well, that's not true. Can they be meat grinders if you run it like that? Sure. Do they have to be? No. Is that the spirit of old school D&D and OSR? As someone who's been playing D&D for over 30 years? No, it's absolutely not. That is not the way it is. Now, in a Dungeon Crawl Classics, which you can see here, there's an alt cover right there over the shoulder. Yeah, they have level 0 funnels, and those you could classify as a meat grind. You have level 0 characters. Whoever survives the funnel, that is your character advances to level. But after that, that's not the premise of the game. That's not the goal of the game. Old school D&D is, yes, deadlier. Lower hit points, fast combat. It's more dangerous. It is more, I would say, a higher level of challenge than uh, Pathfinder, D&D, 5th edition, in terms of challenging the players that death is a failure option. Now, obviously, it can happen. I just recently ended a near 2-year campaign with 5th edition where we had 3 character deaths. And I'm going to go into those character deaths because it has to do with player agency. I'm going to talk about 2 in particular. But player agency and character death are really linked. And why? Because your players need to have choices. If you are not giving your players choices and instead you are storytelling and railroading them down in one specific path where it really doesn't matter what they do, these are the points along which they will advance through the adventure or campaign, then they have no agency. They are just rolling dice and moving from encounter to encounter, and it really doesn't matter. They may not make it to the end, they may fail, technically, lose at that campaign or adventure, but that's not player agency. Also, what is not player agency? Illusion of choice. I've seen this so many times where on YouTube or on blogs or whatever, advice is, hey, your players, give them multiple options, give them 2 or 3 options, but they don't know that all of them will result in the same thing. So, as an example, you are sitting, I don't know, somewhere in Greyhawk or wherever, any world, and players get into a fork in the road in their investigation looking for some kind of magical MacGuffin. And they could go to the mountains to the north or to the hills to the south. And you, as the GM, give them this option. And they choose either one. Doesn't matter. You have predetermined that no matter which way they go, magical MacGuffin will be there because that's what you want for them to find to advance in the adventure plot that you created. Now, how they end up getting the magical MacGuffin, you have maybe different encounters, a different dungeon, whatever, different NPCs they encounter along the way. But at the end of the day, they still get the magical MacGuffin, no matter what. That also is not player agency. It is the illusion of player agency. Now, some will say, what's the harm in that? The players will never know. That's true, unless you tell them. But if they do find out, it's going to feel a little stupid in the sense of, well, I guess it really didn't matter what we did. You already determined what was going to come next. And that is not interesting to me. I think most players want their characters' decisions to matter. So if the magical MacGuffin is in the mountains to the north and the hills to the south is, say, some kind of lich beholder realm, and they choose not to go to the mountains to the north. Instead, they go to the hills to the south. Well, then they don't find the magical MacGuffin, at least not yet. Instead, they have to deal with their choices and the consequences thereof to head down there. And yes, you as the DM, you have to prepare more. You have to create more. You can't just prepare one technical scenario or plot, and no matter which fork in the road the players choose, they end up there because you're lazy and you don't want to do more prep than that, or you're pressed for time. You don't want to do more prep than that. But I would say, as a DM, you owe it to your players then at least to change it up. Maybe if they go to the hills of the south, there's a clue that says you have to go to the mountains to the north to find the magical MacGuffin. But the magical MacGuffin is not there. It's to the north. And I don't like the advice of illusion of choice. And at the end of the day, you as the DM get what you want. The players think they had a choice. No, not at all. I think that's bad DMing, personally. If I would find out as a player that no matter which road I took, I would end up at the same place, that's boring. That really is. And it's not immersion. It's not immersive play where direction you take as a player can totally alter what happens. Especially in sandbox style play, this is very important. But that's why I don't like published campaigns very much. They're very railroady and linear because you have to get to point A, B, and C to advance the plot line. And player agency is only minimally accounted for. In my opinion, 30 plus years of running this kind of stuff. So, a few examples of exactly what I mean. And character death is part of this. It is not failure. It is down to player agency and choices. Now, I don't like character death that happens no matter what. If it's just a vengeful DM that says this is going to end up in death no matter what you do, you can never hit this opponent and you can't escape and you're going to die. But again, I pushed that aside right in the beginning of this video where I said I'm ignoring those people because they are bad DMs. I am talking about people that aren't like that. So what do you then have to do? Here are a few examples. I'm going to look at Elden Ring, Symbaroum, some old school stuff, and then go back to my own 5th edition campaign. So Elden Ring. Why is Elden Ring so successful? I personally am not really good at ARPGs or CRPGs or whatever you call them, video game RPGs. I'm not really great at them. I mean the kind of isometric ones, like Baldur's Gate, yeah, sure. But as far as things like Skyrim, I'm just not great with it with a controller, whatever. I absolutely love Elden Ring. It's very, very difficult and challenging. I enjoy that. But more importantly, you have player agency. You can go anywhere. You can affect things in any direction you want. There is no gotta go here, gotta go here, gotta go here, gotta go here to get that. I mean, there is technically, but you can go all over the place and find out. And you may end up in a place you're not supposed to be yet because you're not powerful enough. You learn by dying and leaving and coming back and things like that. And Elden Ring really captures sandbox play. It captures old school mentality of D&D, and it captures, player agency. I have full agency to go whichever way I want. Yes, I can follow the yellow brick road that's there. If you play Elden Ring, you know what I kind of mean there. But you don't have to. You can go whichever way you want, and you carry the consequences for those actions. And that is something I really enjoy. Simbroom, the next one. You have player agency here from character creation on. You choose whatever direction you want to go with the character you create. There's nothing predetermined. I've talked about this in my illusion of choice video about D&D, but Simbroon really captures that there's no predetermined path you have to take depending on your choices. You have full agency to create whichever character you want, and you play in an immersive sandbox style world for the most part, depending on how you run it. And now let me get to D&D. Can you do this with D&D? Absolutely. Any edition, first edition, second edition, old school essentials, castles and crusades, fifth edition, fourth edition. It really doesn't matter. You can get player agency. The way you get that is by preparing as a DM, offering players 2, 3, maybe 4 choices, and prepping for that. Maybe not like weeks in advance of sessions for each one, but at least the next step from that. And it's completely separate from what the other choices would have been. Now, you could link them somehow, possibly depending on where they go, but if instead of going to the mountains to the north or the hills to the south, they decide to get on a ship and go to the weird islands, then so be it, and adjust and prepare for that. That is full player agency. Now, I know some players also don't like that. They want to have like a quest, a goal. This is what we want to do. But again, I believe you can achieve that with player agency by putting these things as a good DM in your world, in the decisions that they make. They will create these. You can have mini plot points and then riff off of what your players do and build a campaign from there that then it's not linear, but still you have a direction and the players will then go that route. Absolutely. So now going into 5th edition, in my campaign that we ended, there were a few interesting choices, and this will now tie into character death as well. First, the interesting choices. Very early on, they could have gone the road to the north, where they needed to go to a city called Freegate. They could have gone to the north or straight to the east through the woods, and they know the woods are dangerous. Or to the south and kind of skirt the south edge of the woods along the mountains. They wanted to get to Freegate. That I knew that was a predetermined route, place they wanted to go. They chose to go there. But which route they take, well, that's a little bit different. And to the south, I prepared a whole thing about hobgoblins. There was a subplot. There was something that could have deviated them from the course of going to Freegate, which they would have been okay with. They weren't married to the idea of Freegate. Just a couple of players said, we should go there. And that would have led to a new campaign arc that maybe then led them back there the other way. The north, the whole thing with a hill giant gang and some rogue mercenary troops working together and harassing villagers that would have gone in a different direction. And through the woods, well, there was going to be an encounter with a hag and some quicklings and going into the Feywild. If they chose to go into the Feywild, they are corrupted Feywild. And they had choices there too, to either go there or not go there. They chose to go there. Why? Because they're like, this sounds really intriguing. Let's go there. And these are all choices I had to slightly prep for in advance. And then when they got to Freegate, they went through their adventures there, or they got their task done, and then it was open. It was total sandbox. They had to deliver something, or they chose to deliver something, and then it was sandbox. And I prepped 5 different directions that they could have gone. Some were tied, most were not. And then they ended up getting a ship. Two of the characters died. They wanted to then have a campaign to return the ashes of one of the players to his homeland. And this is all player agency. Yes, it's way more burdensome as a DM to prep for all these potential outcomes, but that's player agency. So now let's talk about death and player agency. The notion that character death is DM failure isn't fair, and it's bad advice. It is absolutely not. Again, even if you prep wrong, give your players then an out. If you realize you completely overpowered the situation and it wasn't a fair encounter that you put in front of them, they didn't choose, you chose for them, then yes, switch it up somehow, because that's not fair. That's not good DMing. That's not fun. I don't believe that character survival is necessarily fun. I believe player agency is fun. So the players were in Freegate. They contacted, by chance, happenstance, a beholder. They then the way they got into with the beholder is they had an encounter with his were-rat minions. A couple of the players got bitten, got infected with lycanthropy, went to the beholder, tracked him down. He said, I can get you the cure, but you got to do something for me. And they decided, they actually did the job, and then decided, no, we're going to double cross the beholder. They were 4th level. I don't balance encounters. I don't throw a red dragon at a 1st level party or a 4th level party, but if I say there's a red dragon in those mountains there and they choose to go there, then the red dragon will be there. It was their choice. That is player agency. Their choice was, we're going to take down the beholder and kill him. And I said, okay, well, just remember, you're 4th level. And they're like, no, we know. These are veteran players. They know he was overpowered. He had some shadow elves with him, some were-rats. They set up a really cool little trap in an inn and took on a beholder. Spoilers, they ended up defeating the beholder, barely. However, one of the characters died. How did he die? Well, it was the first round of combat, and it was randomly rolled which eye stock was going to shoot that player. It was the disintegration ray. He didn't make his save, and he died. And that was that. Now, he was bummed, but he wasn't angry, because it was a decision they made as a group, and he was one of the leaders to make that decision. And he realized these were the possible outcomes. And that was player agency and character death. That is meaningful because they chose it. Now they defeated the beholder. They hung out, kind of clean up time and stuff like that. But there were still agents of the beholder that fled. When the beholder went down, the Shadow Elf assassins left. They wanted to come back. And the players said, okay, well, we think they're probably going to come back at this point. We've got some of their stuff. And one of the characters they had guards, and one of was the back door. And he said, it's getting late. My character, she's gonna doze off. Like, okay, you're dozing off on guard duty. Yes. So is asleep. Yes. Okay. I asked a few times. I had already predetermined that backdoor entrance was going to be one of the entryways. These Shadow Elf assassins come in. They came in, killed him. Killed her. And the player was bummed, but fine with it. Again, he made the choices for that character, or that character made that choice and lived with it. That, again, is player agency in a meaningful character death. And when characters make choices, and you look at old school D&D as a best example and go, Caves of Chaos, there are 30 goblins in here. Or we headed into the Owlbear Cave, and instead of retreating, we attack the Owlbear. We are 2nd level, and it's a TPK. That was player agency and choice. Don't fudge the dice. Don't, not in that situation. They chose to do it. And that is then part of the story of those characters. So be it. Be honest. It is not failure of a DM. Players choose to engage in a situation that is dangerous and could kill them. Now, you don't have to tell players ahead of time, but let them know this is dangerous. And if they choose to go in anyway, then so be it. And I usually ask, are you sure? You sure you want to do that? They go, yes. Okay. And there's no pulling back punches. In 5th edition or any D&D, I run monsters that are tactically minded, tactically, as the players do. And it's more challenging that way. And it adds to an immersion into the world where decisions matter. Now, the other thing I saw on Twitter was, I can't believe people are saying, death is the ultimate fail state. Well, it is the ultimate fail state because you died because of a failure. But of course, there are other ways to fail in the game. It doesn't have to end at death. It can be an interesting failure, like being captured or things like that. If I notice things are going south, I've done this before. An wipeout TPK, especially at maybe 3rd or 4th level in a game, instead the characters all got captured. If it was an adversary that may capture them, maybe they want to question them. Why are they here? Okay, they got captured. They have no gear. Everything is gone. They start with nothing. And that is also a fail state outside of death based on player agency and decisions that now it gets really, really interesting. So death doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a constant fail state, but it is one. It is one you should embrace, and that is part of TTRPGs that have a serious combat focus or where danger is a key component. Call of Cthulhu isn't, I would say, a massive combat heavy game. It's an investigative game. But obviously, death is a key part of that game because of decisions that happen. And honestly, swingy dice, bad rolls can happen too. And that's not the DM's fault. That's not the player's fault. It's the dice. We are playing a game where randomness and chance are part of it, and you should embrace that. So, in closing, again, player agency and character death are core components of D&D. They are tightly linked. I would encourage you as players and DMs to have the maturity to embrace them, to not abuse them, but as a DM, give your player true agency. So I hope this rambly video made any sense to you. I felt like I had to put it out there. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, I'm Game Master Matt, and I will talk to you soon.